Hi everyone. Here we're going to be talking about natural language processing and text mining part 2. We are going to cover processing text in Python, regular expressions, and basic NLP with NLTK. So this is the more practical version of the previous, more descriptive and theory part 1. Let's first note these primitive constructs in Python. And by primitive constructs, we mean these data types that are already in Python and do not need to be converted in any other format. And these are sentences or input strings, although we should know that sentence may be the same as a string. So there's a string data type in Python. And if we have one single long sentence, the book is on the table, that's one piece of string. Although for in a grammar sense, it is a sentence. Words or tokens, this is also a term for linguistics, and in Python, it will still be string data type. And by token, we mean the broken down words such as the and book and so on. And in text analysis, we call these the tokens of a longer string. The characters may also be considered a string data type in Python or some kind of object data type, and it will be just the single letter of a string, or it could also be a single punctuation mark or some other kind of single symbol. And then we also talk about document or larger files. So we may have a text that is multiple sentences long, maybe a whole book, and it may be in one single string, or it may be broken down into multiple strings. But this longer text we usually call a document. So it's a longer or long piece of text, longer meaning longer than a sentence. So to review some of the basic Python text processing, so let's follow the code here. Suppose you have this sentence, ethics are built right into, etc., the United Nations, close quotes. You see one single piece of string. We are loading into the text variable one. If we can use the lang function of Python, primitive function, which refers to length, and then it's going to give you the what. What is this? This is the number of words, tokens. It looks like the number of characters, right? This is the number of characters. There's way more than, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, about 13 tokens. So this is the number of characters. Now, if we can use this split function here, it's a primitive function of the string data type. So text one is string, and we can split it. And what goes inside the split function is what you want to split by. You could split by a comma, you could split or on a comma, sometimes it's said, or you could split on a colon, you could split on a period, but here we're splitting on space. And then if we apply this function to text one, and this is the syntax, the structure for how we do it, put that value into a text2 variable, and then we apply the length function, len, we actually get 13. And what's 13? Well, the 13 is the number of items in this list. Okay, so you can see it broke up that string and gave you a set of tokens, as we call it in text mining. So what are the two different data types is a question for you. This is the same code as before. We have the text1 variable and we have text2 variable. If we print the data types of these two, what are each? Pause the video and think about it. Well, as you can probably easily tell, this is going to be string data type text1, as we just put the string in here. And then text2, once we apply the split function, it becomes a text2 is a list. And list is one of the primitive data types of Python. And it's a list. List can be a list of many things. And in this case, it's a list is the data type. So you would print list from this, but more precise, it's a list of strings. Now, there are a number of functions and particularities of Python language that can allow us to do all kinds of text processing. And there is this format here, the syntax that might seem awkward at first, but this is called list comprehension. List comprehension. It's a very useful syntax of Python to process all kinds of data. And what this means is, first, notice that the square brackets here, so this is the beginning of the code. Each set of triple, like sideways brackets, is the beginning of a code. And then we open with the bracket, and it's W for W, and W can be any character. So it could be I for I. This is just a placeholder for the variable. So item for item in text2, so this is the variable we created before, if length of the item is greater than 3. It's a very easy and simple way to just print out item for item in this list if the item is greater than 3, the length of this item. And notice that we're applying length to an item of the list, which is a string, so it is counting the characters. So here's the length, meaning the amount of characters in the word, each character of the word, or each punctuation or symbol. And then it takes that text2 and prints out all the items, all the strings that are greater than 3 characters. Another use of list comprehension and a function here, string function, is so the same idea, W for W or item for item in text2. And you could also, instead of W, you could write item. You should be able to write item or I or Z. So item for item in text2 if item dot is title. So this is a function we are applying to the item variable. And this is primitive to Python. You don't need to import, you shouldn't need to import anything for that. And by is title, it's looking for the words that have the first letter, the first character capitalized. So it's a very basic rule. It doesn't mean that it really is a title, but that's the rule itself, and it may be used in certain cases. So words that end with S, well, same idea. You see, once you see the square brackets here in a piece of code like this, unless it's Regis, it's list comprehension. So item for item in text2 if and only if the item ends with, so ends with is another functions. These are all string functions of Python and only applies to string. And remember, notice that W is a string, so this function can apply to it. If we had a list here, if we had text2 here, dot, I don't think it would work. And then you can, as you can imagine, you can put any item here, ends with T, ends with period, ends with S, ends with M, and so on, and for the argument. Finding unique words using set function. So suppose you have this piece of string, to be or not to be, puts it in the text3 variable, then you split that variable on the space. So you can imagine you're going to have, you could already calculate yourself, you're going to have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tokens. And then if you apply set, it finds the unique words. So here, set of text4, these are the unique words of text4. So you can see that this one word here is repeated. So there's actually 5 unique words. So if you print out the length of that, set it is. And if you print it out here, you can see as well set text not, oh, actually, no, see, oh, that's neat. So the 2 and the 2 actually were not counted as identical because of the capital T. Well, actually, what counted as identical was the B. And you can do this hierarchy, this of functions. So you always begin with the center, the nesting. It's called the nesting. And so we have first, we begin with this, W dot lower for W in text. So you can actually lower the variable, meaning make it to lowercase for the item as you check it. So this can be used for 2, and we may use this in one of our exercises. Lowered word for lowered cased item for each item in text 4. And then if you see and you apply the unique, it reduced from 5 to 4 because now we have these, the 2 and the 2 are matched and the B are matched. And you can see here, not 2 or B. Some word comparison functions, some other word comparison function. You can use starts with or ends with, and, you know, by word we mean any kind of, or string or token usually. These are tokens. So if you apply it in a long string, it's going to usually just look at the last token. T in S, as we were used. Oh, T in S. This may seem weird, but that's the syntax. Look for T in a string. That, you know, look for the letter T in the string, letter B in the string, or T variable in S variable. The way it's written here means T variable in S variable. Is uppercase, is alpha. Alpha means alphanumeric, which means digit or letter. Is lower, check to see if it's lower, is digit, is title, and so on. Some other string operations. So this is to make it lowercase, to make it uppercase, to split, as we've seen, to join, to strip, to find, to replace. We've used some of these too. And replace this value with this value, old, new. Some other notions of cleaning text. So suppose we have a piece of string here, a sentence, and we add this one piece of string to this variable text 8, and then we split it on the space. If we split it on the space, notice sometimes that we'll kind of capture these empty kind of space strings here to come up for this. And then a quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. And then you can strip, use this strip function to the text 8. Note that text 8 is a list of strings, list of tokens, and removes beginning and ending spaces from that list. And then if you put that into a variable text 9, and then if you split that, you remove all those and beginning and ending spaces. We can also process larger text by opening files, and this is something that we often need to do in Python. So you can read a text file in this form. To read text files, we need to open the file. So there has to be an operation to actually open the file. Also, don't forget to add encoding if we need to. That's another parameter, encoding, and usually want to stick to UTF-8, but you need to make sure what your file was encoded with. So when you import the encode and you say encoding equals UTF-8, that's assuming that that file was encoded with UTF-8. And then if you want to read line, you can use the read line function, and you can apply other operations. Now this should be a regular parenthesis here. F.seek. So F is the file that we opened. So we loaded up this whole Universal Declaration of Human Rights into this F variable here. F.seek sets the file pointer at the first line. 0, 0 is the first. You often in computer programming, the first item is 0. So we start counting at 0. And if you can read is a function applied to that file variable, and then text2, and then you can have the length. This length here, I think this is going to be tokens. It depends. Once again, remember, length will apply differently depending on what the item is. You can split the text on the lines themselves. So sometimes text, have multiple lines, and you can split it by lines. So get one line, the first line, the third line, and then here's the number of lines in that text. And then you can use this counter here. So we split the lines of text 12, we'll put it into text 13 variable. We check the length, and then we actually this is the first line that was loaded up here. So this is a set or a list of lines. This is the first line. The second line would be 1, right? You get rid of that, and then text 13, open square brackets 1, close square brackets, and so on. There are a number of file operations that may be important, and you can use these as needed. Of course, always check the manual. Nobody can remember all the functions of Python ever. You gotta always have the manual nearby you and check in the manual. These functions change over time, the syntax changes and so on. But these are some of the common ones that are used to both open files, to read the files line by line, to put the pointer at a particular place, and to write onto the file. That's it for this one, and I'll see you next time.